In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a late-night walk nearly turned into tragedy. A black man, dressed in plain clothes, returned home after a long day, but to one self-appointed security guard, he didn't belong. Within seconds, suspicion turned into confrontation, and a gun was drawn. Neighbors peeked from their windows, phones recording, as fear spread through the block. What no one knew was that this man wasn't just another resident. He was an FBI tactical commander, trained to face the most dangerous threats. Yet here, on his own street, he faced the deadliest threat of all: prejudice. Stay with this story till the very end, because what happened next will leave you shocked. The neighborhood looked peaceful from the outside. Rows of identical houses lined the streets, trimmed lawns glowed under porch lights, and the air carried the hum of crickets. To outsiders, it was the picture of safety and order. But for Marcus Hayes, a black man who had worked his entire life to build success, the neighborhood was never truly welcoming. Some smiled at him, others kept their distance, and a few made it clear with their eyes that he didn't belong. Marcus had recently returned from an exhausting week of work. What no one in the neighborhood knew was that behind his calm, ordinary appearance, he was an FBI tactical commander, a man who had faced cartel leaders, hostage takers, and armed criminals. Yet here, he preferred to live quietly, never drawing attention to his rank or career. To him, this was supposed to be home, a place of rest, not battle. But in neighborhoods like these, the smallest action could be twisted into suspicion. Marcus often jogged late at night or took short walks to clear his head. To him, it was routine. To others, it was out of place. And that unspoken tension had been building for months. The Homeowners Association, run by a handful of residents, had recently hired what they called private security. In truth, it was one man with a badge he printed online and a gun he carried on his hip. His job wasn't to protect. It was to patrol, to watch, and often to profile. One night, Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, the cool night air brushing against his skin. But tonight, the streetlights felt harsher. Shadows seemed to stretch further. Somewhere deep inside, Marcus could sense he was being watched. From the corner house, a figure stirred. The so-called security guard, a man named Rick, had been waiting. He wasn't officially hired through any company, but the HOA loved the idea of having someone to keep order. In Rick's eyes, Marcus had always been suspicious. Rick started his slow patrol in an old SUV with flashing yellow lights. The vehicle crept behind Marcus, headlights cutting across the street. Neighbors peeked through curtains, some recording on their phones, too entertained or too afraid to interfere. Marcus knew the pattern, the engine idling just long enough to unsettle him, the car inching forward whenever he moved. This wasn't about safety, it was about intimidation. Marcus stopped, turned his head slightly, and continued walking. He had faced war zones, cartel shootouts, and rescue missions. But here, every step felt heavier. This wasn't an enemy with a known weapon. This was worse, a stranger with unchecked power, driven by bias, hiding behind a false badge. Rick finally parked and got out. His heavy boots hit the pavement as he shouted questions that weren't really questions, accusations wrapped in the tone of authority. Why was Marcus out here? Where was he going? Did he even live in this neighborhood? Marcus stayed calm, his heart steady, his training reminding him not to escalate. He knew the playbook. Stay still, keep hands visible, make no sudden moves. But Rick wasn't looking for answers. He was looking for control. Each step he took was closer, louder, angrier. His hand hovered near his hip where the gun rested. The silence of the night now carried a different weight, the kind that made every second feel longer. Marcus thought of his family inside the house just a few streets away. He thought of how quickly stories like this spiraled into tragedy. And he knew that no matter his rank, no matter his accomplishments, in this moment he was just a black man being cornered in his own neighborhood. Then it happened. Rick's hand gripped the pistol at his hip, pulling it free with a swift, practiced motion. The gun rose, the barrel locking onto Marcus's chest, a weapon of steel, but more than that, a weapon of judgment, of hate, of assumptions. Windows lit up. Neighbors gasped, some whispering, others recording with shaky hands. A few muttered words Marcus couldn't hear, but he knew the script. They wouldn't step in. They would watch. They would film. But they would not save him. Marcus's training screamed inside him. He could disarm Rick in a second. He could take him down before the man even blinked. But he also knew the truth. If he moved, the headlines would never read FBI Commander defends himself. They would read, Armed Black Man Attacks Neighborhood Security. So he did the hardest thing he had ever done. He stood still, unmoving, unshaken. His eyes locked on Rick's, silent defiance burning in them. He wouldn't beg, he wouldn't crumble, he would endure. For a long, unbearable moment, the world narrowed down to two men, one holding a gun, the other holding his dignity. And though no bullets had been fired, Rick's hands trembled on the gun, his finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger. The street felt suffocating, every second stretched into eternity. But then, a voice shattered the tension. "Put it down, Rick!" It came from across the road, an elderly neighbor who had seen enough. More voices followed, some firm, others nervous, but all carrying the same demand. Windows swung open, phones kept recording, and suddenly, the security Rick thought he had vanished. He wasn't in control anymore. He was exposed. Slowly, with a muttered curse, Rick lowered the weapon, but his eyes never softened. He holstered the gun as if nothing had happened, as though pointing it at an innocent man was just another night's work. He turned and walked back toward his SUV, shoulders stiff with frustration. The yellow lights flicked on, and within seconds, he was gone. But the damage remained. Marcus stood under the streetlight, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Outwardly, he looked composed, the same commander who had led elite tactical teams into life-or-death missions. Yet inside, a storm raged, not because of fear, but because of the cruel irony. He had survived cartel shootouts and terrorist ambushes, only to nearly be killed outside his own home for simply being black. Neighbors whispered. Some avoided eye contact. Others nodded with quiet respect, realizing only now who he truly was. Word spread quickly. The man Rick had targeted wasn't just a resident. He was an FBI tactical commander. The same man who had spent his career protecting others had just been treated like a criminal in his own community. For Marcus, that truth was heavier than the gun that had been aimed at him. His title hadn't saved him. His record hadn't shielded him. In that moment, he wasn't seen as a leader, a protector, or a neighbor. He was seen only through the lens of prejudice, and that's the painful reality too many face every single day. As you finish this story, ask yourself, if an FBI commander isn't safe from bias, what does that mean for everyone? If you've experienced or witnessed injustice, share your story in the comments. I might even make a video about it to raise awareness and justice. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message.